welcome to Peculiar Patman. Today we will be talking about history because I love this subject and there's just so much on it. So before the video, I do like to give a disclaimer just because sometimes it can be distressing to some people, just as a pre-warning. We will be talking about infidelity, S-workers, unaliving people, inbreeding and dunking a person into a river. So our first story takes us to Italy, gorgeous, gorgeous Italy. It takes us in the north of Italy in a place called Trento. On the 19th of June every single year, they basically have an event. It's actually a ceremony that takes place for the politician that has made the worst blunder, which I think is hilarious how they still continue to do this every year. This has been going on for a while as well. So this ceremony is called Tonka, and basically what it is when they get a local politician who has had the worst blunders, and they basically all vote this politician and they say, you've done really, really bad, you need to be dunked. They put this politician in a cage and then they dunk them in the river because they've been naughty. They don't just put them in this cage either. Like, I would have thought maybe they put them in this cage and then maybe like if they need to get out for an emergency, no, they lock them in the cage and then they dunk them in the river. So if you're thinking that this seems like a pretty old school kind of punishment, it's because it is. Because this is from the 14th and the 17th century. And basically it was put in place for blasphemers. That's what it said on the article, which is really funny. All sources will be posted down below the video if you want to have a little look into anything. But yeah, it's basically where they would all just gather and they'll watch the politician get dunked in the river for all the naughty little things they've done. This ritual was based on ancient punishments from the 14th and the 17th century, and it still goes on today, which I think is brilliant. I think I would actually go to Trento to actually go watch this. Like, I want to do the research as well. But like, I'm wondering, like, maybe do they hand out leaflets and be like, this is what that person's done for this year? Imagine if they bought that in this country. That'd be brilliant. The thing is, I think with the River Thames, you'd probably stink for weeks, for absolute weeks. Like, surely as well, like, would they do it in the River Thames? Probably not, because the current would probably take the cage away or something. So it's King Charles II of Spain. King Charles, Cavalier, I can tell. So our next one is in Spain. We've got a bit of a running theme with the whole Europe situation at the moment. Obviously all weird stuff's happening in European history. So King Charles II of Spain, he was born in 1661. He was born with quite a lot of birth defects. And the reason for this is because it was 200 years of inbreeding. And this was because this is because the family were trying to keep the bloodline pure and to strengthen the, like, bloodline, which is jank. Like, we've already spoke about this in my past video. Royals, do your thing. Nah. He was fed by his mother, let's say, just because of YouTube restrictions. I don't think you can say the B word. It's what ladies have. Until the age of 4. The average age to stop bee feeding is like 6 months. I mean, some people do it to 2 years of age, which in my opinion, I personally wouldn't do that. 6 months, even that is a bit of a stretch for me, personally. So at age 4, he had rickets, which, if you don't know what rickets are, it's basically a health condition and it affects your bones. So it can affect the growth of it can give you bone pain, and it can actually give you bone deformalities as you get older. So because of these rickets, he actually wasn't able to walk unaided. He actually had to have leg braces in order to walk or help. He had to wear these until he was 5 years old, which is really, really sad. So I'd like to say it kind of finishes there on a good note, but it doesn't. It actually only gets sadder. So your time to leave if you want to leave. So before the age of 6, he had quite a lot of diseases. He had rubella, chickenpox, smallpox, and measles. And he survived all of them before the age of 6, which, to be honest, in them times, like, you wouldn't be able to have the healthcare that we have now, which is pretty bonkers, especially with a child's body as well. Like, they're growing and they're so, like, susceptible to diseases and everything. So by the time he was an adult, he was completely illiterate. So that basically means that he couldn't read or write, which in itself is really sad. He actually had a deformed jaw and an enlarged tongue. So it meant that he couldn't chew or he couldn't speak either. So, I mean, to be honest, even if he wanted to try, I suppose he wouldn't be able to. So despite all of this, he did actually have 2 wives. One of them actually said that she was quite scared of him. They didn't produce any children, and he didn't produce any children with the other wife either, so it kind of makes me think that they're probably a little bit scared of him, both of them. To be honest, it's probably done them a favour, because, I mean, it's not like he could have really taught them to read or write anyway. He just sounds like he's had a really sad life. So before the age of 35, he was actually completely bald, which, side note, this is not a dig at bald people, because we love bald people on this channel. Shout out to my girls. But he did actually surprise everyone, because he was on the brink of unalivement, and he miraculously survived still. Just trooper. Fighter, mate. So on the 1st of November in 1700, he actually passed away, unfortunately. It was 5 days before his 39th birthday. So the cause of his death was renal failure. So renal failure is basically the excess fluids from the kidneys and also other sort of waste that goes to the bloodstream. And then what happens is they get excreted to the bladder. And the only way to survive this, unfortunately, is to have a kidney transplant or to go on dialysis, which is what we have today. So if he was alive today, then he probably would have made it. But I mean, as sad as it is, it's probably done him a favour. I'm sure he was like, as horrible as that sounds, he was probably going through so much pain. Like, especially all of the stuff he's had to deal with growing up. Like, that must have been so traumatic. Going through all of them diseases to just continue being, especially as well, like, he's got 2 wives, and then them being afraid of him. Like, oh, my heart actually goes out to him. I know he's popped his clogs, but... So despite him passing away from renal failure, they actually did an autopsy and they found quite unusual things. They basically found that his heart was the size of a peppercorn, which is tiny. It's so small. Anyway, so if you think about it, the size of a heart is, on average, the size of your wrist clenched up. That's not, I mean, obviously it'd be different for different people depending on your hands and the size of you and all that jazz. They also found that his lungs were completely corroded. And do you know what men have down there that begins with T? I can't say it because of YouTube. But they said that he had one of them and it was black as coal. That's what it says on the source, which is sad. No wonder he couldn't have any kids. So his intestines were completely rotten and gangrenous, and to top it all off, the finale, his head was full of water. So yeah, very sad. His family apparently were just waiting for him to pass away. I think royals, they should learn the lesson now of not inbreeding. Obviously it's not to the point nowadays. It's more like with cousins and stuff, which is still, hey Alabama, let's just pray that no one does inbreeding like that anymore, because obviously there's something wrong with it. So in this particular snippet, we'll be talking about Ted Bundy, which, I mean, if you haven't heard about him before, haven't researched him, definitely go and have a look, because he is interesting to say the least. When he was 3 years old, he snuck into his 15-year-old auntie's bedroom and he slipped in 3 butcher knives into her bed. And he just looked at her and was snarling and smiling at her. And then she's obviously sort of looked at him, woken up and thought, what is this child doing? Looks at him like, what the hell? Told him to get out. She then told his mother, who ignored it, and she didn't think anything of it. And then the auntie was just like, okay, that's a bit weird that no one else finds that weird. But yeah, and then look what he grew up to be. I mean, if my nephew did that to me, I'd be like, nah, I'm out. I'm heading out, mate. If I lived in that same house as that child, I'd move out straight away. My first thoughts when I read this, it actually gave me chills. Like, that's grim. Because that's not normal. That is not normal at all. That's distressing. So for this next one, just because of YouTube restrictions and all the wording and everything, I will be using S workers for people who, you know, do the deed for money and everything. So this one is based in the 1400s, when they used to actually sell wigs that were made of faux hair. And what they would do was they would put them on when they would do their deeds and everything, you know, their job and all that. And what it would do is it would ward off lice, and it would also conceal any diseases, any sores that they had, just so obviously people wouldn't know that they had it. So nice. So I did think about this and I thought, well, why didn't they just use protection to like stop all these diseases? But obviously at that time, the 1400s, they haven't really got anything like that. I mean, I don't think I can say the C word on YouTube, if you know what I mean. Definitely not that C word. So in 18th century Europe, they actually used animal intestines and linen. So I actually already knew that because I searched it up quite a while ago because I was pretty curious. Sometimes I just do these things where I'm like just having a random day and someone will mention something and I'll be like, why do we use that? What did that used to be made of? When was this invented? But when I was doing this research, I was finding all the other stuff that other countries used to use, and it's jokes. So in Japan and China, they used to actually make johnnies out of tortoise shell, which I'm sorry, but if that was a thing, I'd be like, do you know what? I'm not even gonna bother. I'll just be celibate. Like, how is that? I genuinely don't understand. Like, how can you make something from that? But then later down the line, they then progressed and was like, oh yeah, we'll just use like animal intestines. We'll just use oiled paper. So yeah, I guess that's a bit better. That sounds a bit scratchy though. Do you know what I mean? So in the 17th century, there was a famous opera singer called Julie d'Aubigny. Sorry, my pronunciation is shocking. When I did it on Google Translate, it sounded like Dauphinois.
Julie d'Aubigny.
That sounds like Dauphinois to me.
The potato things are so good.
She liked to swing the other way, if you catch my drift. And she'd go to parties and she'd basically like chat up these women and all that jazz. And the husbands would get really, really annoyed, rightly so. And they get so annoyed to the point where they challenge her to a duel. But what they didn't know is she was like an expert in dueling. So she actually ended up unalived. It's not funny, but do you know what I mean? It kind of is. She unalived quite a few men and even wounded quite a few as well. When I was searching up about this, she actually unalived 10 of them. 10 men. So like you think there's probably more that have been wounded. But like that's a lot of chatting up women. But yes, queen. There was actually another story of her going into a convent as well and having relations with a nun, which is I don't know. I have no words for that. I find that pretty funny. By that point, like surely that's got to be some kind of hobby, like a moody one at that, obviously. But whatever floats your boat, I guess. Pretty brutal. What have we learnt today? So we've learnt that the women on this list are wild, and to be honest, that's pretty iconic. But yeah, we'll leave that there. Maybe in the past. Can we bring back the dunking of politicians into the river? Because that sounds like a really good idea. I think a lot of the UK would get behind that. Might set up like a blooming, I don't know, like a list to do that, because that sounds like a really good idea. I think the UK would definitely all be behind that. And Charles, I hope you're all right in heaven. That's really, really sad, that story. Let's hope that our king doesn't have that. And Ted Bundy, yeah, he's another one. And I mean, to be honest, if anyone's sneaking stuff in your bed like knives, I just wouldn't even bother. Like, just get out of there. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video, found it all really interesting. I'll definitely be coming out with some more in future. Like, subscribe, comment, whatever. But yeah, have a nice day.